I never expected bread to change my life. But here we are. It started 3 months ago when I moved into the apartment above the bakery on 7th Street. The place was cheap, conveniently located, and filled with the constant smell of fresh bread, which I figured was either going to be heaven or torture for my waistline. What I didn't anticipate was the baker himself, or the way he'd slip into my thoughts at the strangest moments, or how I'd find myself lying awake at 4 in the morning, listening for his footsteps on the stairs below. His name is Theo. I learned that from the sign in the window, hand-painted letters that read Theo's in a simple, elegant script. I'm Reed, by the way, 28, graphic designer, chronically single, and apparently the kind of person who develops feelings for someone based on the way they knead dough through a window at dawn. The first time I saw him was my second day in the apartment. I'd been up late unpacking, and insomnia had me awake at some ungodly hour, standing by my kitchen window with a cup of terrible instant coffee. That's when I noticed the light on in the bakery below, warm and golden against the pre-dawn darkness. And there he was, moving through the space with this quiet efficiency, his hands working the dough with a kind of reverence that made me forget about my coffee entirely. He was beautiful in this unassuming way. Dark hair that fell across his forehead when he leaned over his work, strong forearms dusted with flour, and this focused expression that made it clear he was completely absorbed in what he was doing. I watched him for maybe 20 minutes before I realized how creepy that probably was and forced myself back to bed. But I kept watching. Not every morning, and not for long, but enough that I started to recognize his routine. He arrived at 4:30, always wearing the same faded denim apron. He'd start with the sourdough, then move to the croissants, his movements practiced and sure. Sometimes he'd pause, stretch his back, and I'd feel this strange flutter in my chest that I wasn't quite ready to name. The bread appeared on my doorstep on a Tuesday. I'd been living there for almost a month, and I'd managed to avoid actually going into the bakery because I'm apparently a coward who can't handle normal human interaction when attraction is involved. I opened my door to head to work and nearly tripped over the package. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with kitchen twine, and still warm to the touch. There was no note. Just the bread, a gorgeous round sourdough loaf with a perfectly scored top, sitting there like some kind of carb-based mystery. I brought it inside, unwrapped it carefully, and the smell alone was enough to make me want to cry. When I tore off a piece and tasted it, I actually did make this embarrassing sound of pleasure that I'm glad no one was around to hear. The bread kept coming. Every Tuesday and Friday, like clockwork, always before I woke up. Different types each time. Focaccia studded with rosemary and sea salt. Challah with a golden, glossy crust. Olive bread that tasted like sunshine and the Mediterranean. Each loaf was perfect, clearly made with care and skill, and each one left me more confused and more curious. I started leaving notes. Nothing weird. Just simple thank yous written on index cards that I'd leave outside my door on Tuesday and Friday mornings. Thank you for the focaccia. It was incredible. The olive bread made my entire week. I've never tasted sourdough this good. I never signed them, and I never got a response. But the bread kept coming. My best friend Maya thought the whole situation was hilarious. "Let me get this straight," she said over drinks one night. "A hot baker is leaving you bread. You're leaving him thank you notes, and neither of you has actually spoken to each other. Reed, this is either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the weirdest." I argued it was probably just good customer service, that maybe he did this for all the tenants in the building. She pointed out that I was the only tenant in the building, the other units being storage for the bakery. I had no comeback for that. I started timing my morning coffee to coincide with his baking. I'd stand at my window, partially hidden by the curtain like some kind of Victorian ghost, and watch him work. I learned things about him through observation. He was left-handed. He had this habit of humming while he worked, though I couldn't hear the tune. Sometimes he'd mess up and have to start over, and the frustration on his face was so genuine and unguarded that it made my heart ache. Once he burned himself on the oven, and I watched him run his hand under cold water, and I felt this overwhelming urge to run downstairs and check if he was okay. I didn't, because again, coward. The notes I left started getting longer. I couldn't help myself. The challah was perfect. I had it with honey and butter, and it reminded me of Friday dinners at my grandmother's house. Your sourdough has ruined me for all other bread. I went to the grocery store yesterday, and everything looked like cardboard. Do you know you hum while you bake? I can see you from my window sometimes. It makes me smile. That last note felt too honest the moment I set it down. I almost picked it back up, almost tore it into pieces and threw it away. But I left it there, my heart pounding stupidly fast, and went to work where I accomplished absolutely nothing because I kept wondering if he'd read it yet, what he'd think, if I'd crossed some invisible line. The next bread delivery came with a note of its own. Small, written on a scrap of paper bag in handwriting that was surprisingly neat. I'm glad the humming doesn't bother you. I didn't realize anyone could hear. Or see. The bread is better when I'm happy. And your notes make me happy. I read that note probably 50 times. I analyzed every word like it was some kind of sacred text. He was glad. The bread was better when he was happy. My notes made him happy. I sat on my kitchen floor with that piece of paper bag clutched in my hand and felt something shift in my chest. Something that had been closed for a long time, creaking open just a little. My notes got braver. I moved here 3 months ago and haven't really met anyone yet. Your bread makes this place feel like home. His response. Home is what we bake into things. I'm honored to be part of yours. Me. What made you want to be a baker? Him. My grandfather. He said bread was the most honest food. You can't fake it or rush it. It teaches patience. Me. I'm not very patient, but I'd wait a lifetime for your sourdough. Him. You won't have to wait that long. Same time Friday. It became our thing. The bread, the notes, this strange paper conversation happening on my doorstep in the hours between night and morning. I learned that his favorite bread to make was rye because it reminded him of his childhood. That he'd opened the bakery 2 years ago after working in corporate finance and hating every minute. That he was 31, had a cat named Crumb, and believed that bread could fix most problems, or at least make them more bearable. I told him things too, about my job designing websites for startups, which was fine but not what I'd dreamed of doing. About moving to the city after a bad breakup. How I'd been trying to figure out who I was when I wasn't part of a Dewey. About my family. Supportive but distant. The kind of people who loved me but didn't quite understand me. I didn't mention that I was gay. Not directly, but I didn't hide it either. I mentioned my ex, used he and him, and waited to see if the bread would stop coming. It didn't. Instead, the next note said, breakups are like bread that doesn't rise. Sometimes the environment isn't right, the timing is off, or the ingredients don't work together the way you hoped. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the flour. I laughed and cried at the same time when I read that, sitting on my couch at 6 in the morning. And I thought maybe, possibly, I was falling in love with someone I'd never actually spoken to. Maya insisted I had to actually meet him. You can't fall in love through bread and notes, she said. I mean, you can, apparently you are, but Reed, you have to actually talk to him. Use words, out loud, in person. I knew she was right, but the thought of walking into that bakery and seeing him face to face terrified me. What if the reality didn't match what I'd built up in my head? What if I was just a customer to him? And the notes were just good business practice, and I'd misread everything. But the notes kept getting more personal, more intimate. He told me about nights when he couldn't sleep, when he'd come down to the bakery at 2 in the morning and just bake until his mind quieted. I told him about the panic attacks I sometimes got, how the smell of bread from his bakery would drift up through my floorboards and somehow make everything feel less overwhelming. He wrote, "Bread is just flour and water and time, but somehow it becomes something more, something that nourishes. I think people are like that too." I wrote back, "What if I came down sometime, to the bakery, during business hours, to actually buy bread like a normal person?" I left the note and immediately regretted it. What was I doing? This was perfect the way it was, safe and distant and impossible to mess up. Except, it wasn't perfect, because I wanted more. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to see if his eyes crinkled when he smiled. I wanted to know if the electricity I felt through paper and bread would translate to actual presence. His response came not with the next bread delivery, but slipped under my door later that same day. "I'd like that. I'm here every day, but mornings are best. Before the rush. Before I have to be professional and remember that not everyone wants to hear about hydration ratios and fermentation times. Come tomorrow, 6:30, I'll save you the best croissant." I didn't sleep that night. I tried on 4 different outfits, which was insane because it was just going downstairs to a bakery. Not a date. Definitely not a date, even though my racing heart seemed to think otherwise. I settled on jeans and a blue sweater that Maya once said brought out my eyes, then immediately changed because that felt like trying too hard, then changed back because apparently I was 17 again and had forgotten how to be a functional adult. At 6:25, I stood outside my apartment door, hand on the doorknob, trying to remember how to breathe. I'd been watching him for months, writing to him, falling for him in this strange, gradual way that felt both inevitable and impossible. And now I was about to walk down one flight of stairs and actually meet him. And I was more terrified than I'd been of anything in years. The bakery was warm and golden when I pushed open the door, the bell above chiming softly. The smell of fresh bread enveloped me immediately. Yeast and butter, and that indefinable scent of something made with care. And there he was, behind the counter, looking up at the sound of the bell, and our eyes met. And oh, he was even more beautiful up close. His eyes were this warm brown, like honey in sunlight, and when he smiled, his whole face transformed. "Reed," he said, and my name in his voice sounded like something precious. "I was hoping you'd come." "Theo," I managed, and it felt significant somehow, finally saying his name out loud, making this real. I should have come sooner. "You came at exactly the right time," he said, and there was something in his expression, nervous and hopeful and genuine, that made me brave. He pulled out a croissant from beneath the counter, golden and perfect and still warm. "I made this one special. For you." I took it, our fingers brushing for just a moment, and that simple touch sent electricity racing up my arm. "I don't know what to say," I admitted. "This whole thing has been so strange and wonderful, and I've never done anything like this before. And I'm rambling, aren't I?" "I like your rambling," Theo said softly. "I've been reading your notes and imagining your voice. It's better than I imagined." He paused, seemed to gather courage. "Can I be honest with you? I've been leaving you bread because I didn't know how else to talk to you. I'd see you in the window sometimes, and I wanted to know you, but I'm not good at this, at putting myself out there. Bread is easier than words. Except now I have both. and I still don't know what to say, except that I'm really glad you're here. My heart was doing something complicated in my chest, expanding and contracting and feeling too big for my body. I'm glad I'm here too, I said. I've been watching you bake and leaving you notes and eating your bread and falling a little bit in love with you through all of it. And that's probably too much to say right now. Too honest. But I've spent so long being careful with my feelings and I'm tired of it. You make bread that tastes like home and you leave it at my door before dawn and you write me notes about patience and rising, and I think maybe I've been waiting my whole life for someone like you. Theo's smile was soft and wondering. That's not too much, he said. That's everything. I've been putting my feelings into every loaf, hoping you'd taste them, hoping you'd understand. Every time I scored the dough, I was thinking of you. Every time I shaped a loaf, I was imagining your hands receiving it. I've been baking you love letters, Reed. I laughed, feeling tears prick at my eyes, feeling something huge and terrifying and wonderful blooming in my chest. They worked, I said. Your love letters worked. He came around the counter then, slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted. I didn't want. He stopped close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the dusting of flour on his forearm. Can I kiss you? He asked, and his voice was rough with emotion. I've been wanting to for months. Please, I whispered, and then his lips were on mine, soft and warm and tasting faintly of sugar, and it was better than any bread, better than anything I'd ever experienced. His hand came up to cut my face, gentle and sure, and I leaned into him, into this moment, into the terrifying, beautiful reality of being wanted and wanting in return. When we broke apart, we were both smiling, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. So, Theo said, I close the bakery on Sundays. Would you want to have dinner with me? Actual dinner, not just bread-based correspondence. I'd love that, I said. Though I have to admit, the bread-based correspondence was pretty great. We can keep that too, he said. I'll still leave you bread. But now I can also take you to dinner and kiss you goodnight, and maybe, if you want, we can figure out what this is together, in person, with words and touch and time. Time, I repeated, like bread. Exactly like bread, he agreed. The best things can't be rushed. They need patience and attention and care. They need the right conditions to rise. I kissed him again, quick and sweet, tasting possibility. I think we have the right conditions, I said. That was 3 months ago. Now I wake up most mornings to bread on my doorstep, but also to text messages from Theo asking how I slept, if I want coffee, when he can see me again. I go down to the bakery most days before work, and he saves me a croissant and steals a kiss when no customers are looking. On Sundays, we cook dinner together in my apartment, and he teaches me about bread, his hands guiding mine through the kneading, patient when I mess up, delighted when something turns out right. We're taking it slow, letting this rise naturally, giving it time to develop flavor and structure. But every day I fall a little more in love with him, with the way he hums while he bakes, with his passion for fermentation and his terrible jokes about yeast, with the gentleness in his hands and the kindness in his eyes, with the way he looks at me like I'm something precious, something worth waiting for. Last week, he gave me a key to the bakery. For early mornings, he said, when you can't sleep, come down and keep me company while I bake, or just sit and watch. I like knowing you're there. So now sometimes I do, curling up in the corner of his kitchen with a blanket and a cup of tea, watching him work, and it's the most peaceful I've ever felt. Maya says we're disgustingly cute. She's probably right. But I don't care. I spent so long being careful, being afraid, keeping my heart locked away safe where it couldn't be hurt. And then a baker started leaving bread at my door, and I let myself be brave enough to reach back, to risk rejection, to hope that maybe this beautiful man could feel the same way about me that I was starting to feel about him. I was right to hope. We're still figuring things out, still learning each other, still in that early stage where everything feels new and exciting and a little bit scary. But it feels right. It feels like home. Like bread, fresh from the oven, warm and nourishing and made with love. This morning I woke up to bread on my doorstep as usual, but also to Theo sitting beside it, leaning against my door, waiting for me with 2 cups of coffee and a shy smile. I wanted to deliver this one in person, he said, and to ask if maybe you'd want to spend the day with me. I'm teaching a bread-making class this afternoon, and I could use an assistant. Someone who doesn't mind getting flour everywhere, and who I can kiss between batches. I pulled him to his feet and into my arms, breathing in the scent of him, yeast and vanilla, and something uniquely Theo. I'd love that, I said, though I should warn you, I'm a terrible baker. You're perfect, he said, and kissed me slow and sweet. And I'll teach you. We have time, all the time we need. So that's my story, the story of how a baker left bread on my doorstep and changed everything. How I fell in love through notes and sourdough and patience. How I learn that sometimes the best things come when you're brave enough to reach for them, to risk your heart, to believe that maybe, just maybe, you deserve something beautiful. I never expected bread to change my life, but I'm so grateful it did. I'm grateful for every loaf, every note, every moment that led me to Theo, to this love that's still rising, still developing, still becoming what it's meant to be. And I can't wait to see what we bake together.